cigars. Would you like one?
No. A cigar is a cigarette without any manners. An Englishman said that.
Churchill?
No, I don't know which one. I just assume it must have been.
Of course it's an Englishman.
Because it's witty and it's
erudite and swift.
Exactly. What do you think an American would come up with that? No.
You'd be bludgeoned with it by an American.
I believe the English race was created just to give us Americans something to quote from.
That's our whole function, is to give you a sort of a backstory.
Yes, you're a lexicon with a nice green.
Thank you very much.
So you're cutting a cigar. Now, you can also use that for circumcision, you know.
I actually botched one before I came in. I thought I'd trim the foreskin out of respect for your country. I know it's preferred here. Not that I imagined that our fallacies would necessarily be involved in the conversation, but I gave it a trim and it's not been a complete success. I'll level with you.
Is that the correct plural of phallus?
Phalli, you reckon?
Well, I mean, when you say fallacies, it sounds like fallacies, the word. So, like,
fallacies.
Are you saying that your penis is a fraud?
Yeah, and yeah,
I guess you'd be saying that our penises are a fraud.
It's certainly taken me in some peculiar directions.
I bet you your penis has seen some things. Yeah. I mean, what? Why are you wincing? It's something to be proud of. You're one of the few, like, rock star comedians.
Did you see me that way?
I still see you. Look how you're dressed. Look how you look. You played a rock star twice in movies, I think, right?
Greek. That's right.
And you married a rock star, and you were on heroin. I mean, you're a rock star, you know, and you have the look. You have the look.
When you say it like that,
you can't buy that.
It sounds fantastic.
If you could buy it, I would have done it by now.
The thing is, Bill, is that whilst that sounds like a tremendous set of experiences, I was, of course, there while they were happening. They were mostly rather bleak, in all honesty.
I find that hard to believe. People say that all the time when they describe this life that the rest of us could only dream of, you know, with the women, drugs, and the constant adulation, the partying, and I'm like, why can't you people just enjoy this? I feel I certainly would.
Possibly there's a difference between Epicureanism, hedonism, and what I think I have, which is addiction. And I suppose addiction means that you're trying to remedy a spiritual, or possibly from a secular perspective, psychic condition through sort of external means. And rather than, I'm a joyous, piratical sort of sex buccaneer, for me, I was just on like a kind of, I'm unhappy. And also I'm like a...
By the way, sex buccaneer is the greatest name for a band.
Yeah.
If you ever start one.
And if you ever wanted to make a portmanteau out of those, fuckaneer seems so available.
Right, portmanteau, another great word.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't have a better time having a better time than the rest of us.
Look, actually, I'm not seeking any sympathy from it. I'm just sort of remarking, Bill, that like when I hear my life described, I think, oh my God, that sounds so cool, and indeed was everything I aspired to as a young man, trying, I think, to somehow mitigate feelings of unease and emptiness, probably in common with many comics and entertainers. And when I did it, it just did not work and has left me one of the few areas where I imagine we're somewhat at odds, only with a kind of spirituality as my last remaining option.
Why do we have to drag all this depressing psychological stuff into it when it just would be great to get a lot of drugs and pussy? I don't understand why we have to overthink it and complicate it. And it's just like when
I was... Is that really your position?
It is. And I will stand by it. I'm a one-issue candidate on drugs and pussy and not overthinking it. I mean, not pussy, but like, you know, yes, I mean, just rock star sex. I mean, is there a man alive who doesn't, you know, at some point in his youth aspire to that? There certainly wasn't when I was 13 years old. What would you be if you could have anything? A rock star. The girls throw themselves at you. Right, just that. Just girls throw themselves at you. You had me.
Absolutely, and certainly it's what I aspire to, but even in your description of it, it was an adolescent fantasy. And the problem with adolescent fantasy is that you grow up. I grew up, and I found myself inhabiting something that didn't endure for me. But describe me as an idealist, and I am an idealist, and I feel like what is idealism? I suppose is the suggest that there's a telos, that there's an object that I'm moving towards, and for me that's a sort of I don't know. Is it self-actualization? Is it redemption? Is it love? Is it to live a worthwhile life? I mean, what are all of the principles that we're discussing when we're having a conversation around politics? What's undergirding it if we don't have any ideals? I mean, if it is just the sort of brutal pragmatism of who gets what, and I know those sort of highly consequential conversations, but surely whether or not you believe in God or if you believe in America or whatever values you hold, we're sort of saying there's something we're aspiring to, there's some meaning. So to just wrap up what I feel about the hedonism is, I now know that what I sought out was the fantasy of a boy, and it doesn't work. It didn't work. Not to say that there wasn't
It didn't work for
pleasure.
you. It worked splendidly for Rod Stewart. So let's not lump. We're all different people, and from again, I'm sort of being facetious about this, but the idea that because you went to this different model of marriage and children, whatever that is that people do, that means you grew up and I didn't. I must reject that because, again, I think you're projecting. It's not that I haven't grown up. Of course I'm grown up, and I'm just as mature as some other immature people in lots of ways. But no, I'm not. I don't feel like I'm immature because I never wanted to go into that model, which I have seen fail so much more than I have seen it work. And so, like, do I feel the need to, like, spawn to be labeled a grown-up? I don't.
I'm not suggesting that the only route to maturation is to have a family or to procreate or even enter into sort of social norms around matrimony. I'm not suggesting that at all. The distinction I'm making is that for me, when I lived hedonistically, it didn't work, and I recognise that is. I'm talking particularly as an addict.
But can
actually.
I ask you, in percentage-wise, like what percentage didn't work? Certainly, there must have been a little percentage that was fun, and then there was like a hangover. Is like if you ask me after I've had too much to drink when I have a hangover, would you trade? No, I would love to trade. Yes, I would love to go back to last night and not be drinking. I would give that fun up because this is just too painful, but I didn't see it coming that bad. Is it like that? Or where there was no joy in Mudville? There was no joy before the pain?
A common trope around addiction is it was fun, then it was fun with consequences, then it was consequences. And
no,
and for me, it was quite concentrated. Even now, I'm 20 years clean from substance misuse.
Really?
Now, drink and drugs, and still now I can feel in me the palette of emotions and yearning that leads to overuse, for example, of substances. It was so clear that what it was in me was a sort of a psychic or spiritual yearning, a sense that this is not enough, the world. And I'm talking now about the world I inhabited as a boy, as a child. Like, this isn't going to fulfill me. I need something else. I need, what is it, values? Is it community? Is it connection? Is it meaning, purpose? What is it? And I feel denied that. One of the things that concerns me, I suppose, about the secular framing of the ideological sphere is that once you extract a sort of a shared purpose that for me has to have a sort of, if not a sprinkling of the divine, it's actually a divine crucible. Unless they're like, look, what is pleasure alluding to? That's what I'm saying, I suppose. Like when I'm like sort of, if you're in love with someone or if you're making love with someone or if you're high, what is it that you're touching? What is this ulterior thing?
So, I mean, who said art for art's self? Was it Oscar Wilde? Why? I mean, isn't that the same thing as pleasure for pleasure's self? Why does it have to allude to anything? It is the end. Sometimes the journey is over. Some people, I think, just like to stay on the road. I like to be home. And home is like, if you are, not every day is happy, of course, but a day when you're like feeling good, you have things to look forward to, you feel like you're doing something useful, and you also have pleasure in your life, excitement with other people, and conversation, sex. I don't want to go further. Like that's it. Like as long as I'm on Earth now, maybe we don't know. Maybe in the next world, if there is one, there is some other dimension. But on this Earth, I'm not going to get to that dimension. Or you say you can through meditation and just that kind of stuff.
I think some people kind of cannot live without that dimension. I wonder, even taking something as broad yet particular as the opioid crisis in your country, that we can't allow it to be lost on us that there's a significant proportion of the population that are in so much pain that they need to obliviate it somehow. What is the source of this pain? Now, when you say pleasure, it needn't lead anywhere. From an evolutionary perspective, we are aware that it is entirely perfunctory. We're aware that eating food feels good in order to mandate that behavior, that sex feels good in order to encourage that behavior. So there is at least facility in it. I wonder sometimes, I ponder the unanswerable. I wonder what is the function of pleasure. And as someone that has, I suppose, gotten myself into, I want to say, it's not worked for me very well. And that is the distinction. We're obviously different men. And one of the things I've been blessed with is I'm pretty non-judgmental, actually, about the way other people live. It's not that I don't care, but I recognize I don't know very much.
No, you're just passionate about what you believe.
Yeah.
And we are different in the sense that you said it, like you ponder the unponderable. I go, well, that's not ponderable. I'm not going to ponder it. Why am I wasting my time pondering when I could be partying?
This is wasteful pondering.
No, I feel like, was it Freud who said, it's based this work and love. Those are the two things that we have, and I don't go much beyond that. Like that spiritual dimension, you mentioned Larry Charles before and Religulous, and Religulous is not a mean-spirited movie at all. That's why I think it did pretty good, because people didn't see it as an attack on religion. They just said, here's the reality of this, and we're not hating on anybody. But it says, the message of the movie is, I say, I'm from the church of I don't know. I'm not definitive about there is not a God. Who the fuck knows? I can't answer the questions that are unanswerable. The difference to me between a religious person and a non-religious person is we both admit there's these questions. I don't make up stories to answer them because I know there's stories that are made up. So can I tell you how the universe began? I cannot, and neither can you. So when you give me your story, I'm just saying, I know people with a faith think that makes them sound some sort of so sublime, and all I'm thinking is, well, plainly you heard this story and now you're repeating it, and that's really all there is to it. And those things that are beyond us to know while we're on Earth, I just feel like, why masochistically torture yourself trying to figure something that you can't in this life? It's like, I picture somebody there's a wall, they're standing in front of it, and they feel like, if I could just get a little higher, I could get there and look over the wall, when they don't realize the wall is 1,000,000 miles high. They're not even close to doing that. And yet they're thinking, if I could just see a little more, you can't. So, I think that makes it easy to be not a troubled soul.
Yeah.
Because I don't have one.
That's pretty great. I mean, I really admire that. And I certainly agree that when we contrast what is known with what is unknown, we have to accept that we are dealing with a negligible amount of data, even with the wonders of cosmology and the quantum world. The little that we understand amounts to zero. I suppose you need to like something.
Can I have that circumcision thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought you'd never ask. What? Do you mean for your penis?
No, for my cigar. They always put a big fucking thing on the end of it, these clove cigarettes.
Is that what that is as a clove
exactly.
cigarette? Exactly. So a simple clove cigarette, a simple man enjoying a clove cigarette in his
say it every week.
Clubhouse.
I do not know what they're putting in these clubs.
Because is it having a positive effect?
It's so fantastic. Yeah, it's been 20 years for you, huh, mate?
Yeah, 20 years.
And you never just one day out of the blue, you never just go, boy, it would be good to just smoke one joint and be hot. Just pot. I mean, that's a pretty benign. You must have had some good times on pot before it all went sour.
Well, I do actually remember feeling quite... I don't know where I put my suit. I've like Mary Poppins, rooting around in my little carpet bag for my circumcision device.
You didn't leave it on your dick, did you?
I lost my nerve halfway through.
But you are circumcised, right?
No, actually not.
No?
Like a lot of English people,
Really?
I'm very unwilling to give up any part of that aspect. I'm clinging on to every millimeter.
But it's so gross. I always said it looks like something that lives in the ocean. So you didn't...
Don't you enjoy... Well, the thing is, you're denying yourself variety, because when you retain the foreskin, there's times where it entirely retracts and retreats. There's other times where it pops out to say hello. You see like a glimpse of it.
Really?
Yeah, it gives you... It's a surprise. Every time I look in my underpants,
It's okay.
I don't know who I'm going to meet. Sorry about this. It's just messing with your... Like,
it's
you've
not
asked for it, and I like to help people.
Yeah, I mean, we just...
I love the opportunity to help. I live to help.
It's hysterical.
Sorry about this.
No, I think it's a delightful version of this show. Not that this is really a show, but it's on a very special episode. Russell Brand searches endlessly. It's sort of a metaphor for what we were talking about.
Right.
You're a searcher.
I'm a seeker. I won't stop seeking.
Exactly. Isn't that interesting the way that happened? Do you think that's some kind of cosmic...
Yeah.
You do?
I do. I think that continually we're being granted...
What kind of show do you think... what kind of
You seem so confident, Bill.
What kind of show do you think this is?
All of the Epicureanism.
Oh.
This guy lives for pleasure. Oh, fuck it. I'm in.
Well, I've never had a guy blow me, but if I had to have one, I'd pick you.
That's a really very lovely compliment, and I'm going to be watching out for your media appearances to see if you make good on this pledge that you'll forget and move on.
How often do you come to America? Or if I was in a bar, do you come to America often?
Infrequently.
No, not frequently?
Not these days. I've not been for a while because I don't know if you noticed there was a pandemic quite recently.
Oh, right.
Slowed people down. It affected
But you still
travel.
like us, don't you?
I love America. I've got a green card, as a matter of fact. So.
Oh, really?
Does that mean I am American? I wish, do you know, it's bothered me.
No, I love it that you. You know what? I always say, when you're a sports fan.
Hey, I found it.
You found it.
Is it mule?
Oh.
I don't know. What's the moil? That's the name of the people that do circumcision in the Judaic faith.
And you know something? Want to hear something gross?
Of course. That's why I came, Bill. I'm surprised I've heard anything else.
Okay, so sometimes the moil gives the baby herpes.
Oh, that's not right, is it? That can't be. Is that part of the ceremony?
No,
they shouldn't do that.
It's definitely not right. But because, this has happened many times, because they have herpes and then they bite, there's a part of it where they bite the penis or something where the penis goes in the mouth. And, I'm all for people doing whatever they want. I mean, again, when I preached against religion, I certainly was never saying, well, you shouldn't be able to. No, of course, you could think any crazy shit you want. But when it bleeds into bleeding and child abuse, I would even say it's child abuse that when they seek the Buddhists, supposedly we're not religious, we're better than you actual religious people, we're more spiritual. Okay, and yet when the Lama dies, they snatch a child who they have divined to be the reincarnation of the recently dead Lama. And I've seen a documentary on this, and the mother is weeping. Of course, because they're taking her 2-year-old away. And the child is weeping because he's being separated from his mother. And he has to go to some, monastery because he's the reincarnated Lama. And we're going to examine his poop or whatever they do to,
On what amounts to, let's face it, a hunch. Of a hunch. This is the Dalai Lama.
A hunch at best. First of all, you have to believe in reincarnation. Now, maybe you do. Do you?
What I feel like is that once we start to frame the unknowable within the ordinary, using quotidian language to describe the ephemeral.
Wow.
We're in danger of saying stuff that's kind of stupid, and yet we need ceremony, and yet we need ritual. I just would say that if the ritual does involve biting off a baby's dick or snatching a child from its mother, you should be absolutely sure there's no other motive. You want to be sure about that.
Yes, because, well said, because religion certainly is known as the biggest pussy scam ever. I mean, everybody's got one. Cops will pull over a pretty girl, and, that's a big thing with cops and girl. I don't know any pretty girl that doesn't have a story about a cop who tried to fuck them, hey, you need a ride, or, you need an escort, whatever their shit is. Everybody's got a scam. But boy, religion, their scam is, a lot of it is, I'm the prophet and God told me to fuck all the chicks in the compound.
And also they're not...
And the Catholics with the little boys.
That's right, they're not particular about the genitalia. Like, they're sort of equal opportunities. You're right about that. Many a good cult has been ruined.
I'm going to cut off my finger.
I
don't. Do you hold it there?
Do you want me to help with this? Because I don't want to look
over.
Show me
how you
how operate this thing.
Yeah.
Well, what are we taking off? We're taking off the top end of that.
Yes.
Like that. It's like a guillotine.
Right.
Vive la France. Like that. Bloody aristocracy holding us back. Robespierre, that crew, just like that.
And what is this thing called? This
I don't know. I guess isn't it still going to be called a cigar car? In your country, probably a cigar car. In mine,
how about a mini moil?
A mini moil. Don't mind if I do.
Or
Herpes not included.
Or a portable moil.
Yeah, portable moil.
I mean, it's a mini moil. Yeah, I like that. Let's go
Auto moil, mini moil.
Let's go into business.
We brainstormed a few names. We've gone with mini moil.
Let's go. I'm going to use this. It's called a scissors. I don't know why.
You've got all of that stuff. You've got a lot of paraphernalia.
I always say, if you live long enough, you do everything. And now I can say I used a mini moil, and I have no desire to use it again. I'll stick with the scissors.
Now, you were talking about reincarnation. You were talking about a lot of the sort of more Rococo aspects of Buddhism.
I love that word. Rococo, yes.
So, yeah, because it is quite austere and stringent, and we're not saying that there's a God necessarily and all of this stuff, but we are, following a plume of smoke to divine whether or not this child was a lama. And I wouldn't disparage anybody's religion. It's unbecoming.
No.
But I suppose what my spiritual beliefs amount to is a kind of benign intent towards one another and the potential for an ulterior realm, i.e. that all apparent separateness emerged at some point from unity, and that is underwritten by the most rudimentary explanation of the Big Bang. All of the matter and phenomena was held within a subatomic...
What do you think about the Big Bang?
As Terence McKenna says, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. Like what precedes this. I mean, it's glorious and obviously demonstrable as a result of the movement of matter, but it doesn't solve a lot. It doesn't solve the problem of the Tuesday before the Big Bang, is of course.
But look, people who I really think are way smarter than me, I know they are, about this subject, which I am very limited in astrophysics. Okay, that's just not my area.
Let's get into this.
I know the basics, but just the real basics. But I fully believe Neil deGrasse Tyson knows this stuff on a level that I cannot understand. So I really, my point is, as someone who's not religious, I'm also just taking this on faith, because when you go into what the Big Bang is, that everything in the universe fit into something that it could fit into your mini moil.
That's right. We could snip that. Maybe that's what caused it.
And let's go into what is fitting into something the size of a quarter. Okay, imagine the Earth being so compacted that it could fit into a quarter. Now, if I just said the whole Earth could fit in, you'd be like, that is so ridiculous. Okay, now let's add all the other planets and our sun and say they could fit in there. Oh, wow, now you're really stretching it. Okay, but it's not just our planets and our sun, it's all the planets and all the suns. So we're talking about trillions of stars, maybe trillions of galaxies, certainly hundreds of billions of galaxies, all fitting in something that small. Now, that does sound as ridiculous as God said to his child, son, I'm going to go send you down to Earth, and I've knocked up this Palestinian woman. She's going to have you and then you're going to die and come back to life. Now, I don't believe that happened. But the other one about the Big Bang is almost as silly unless you're an astrophysicist.
Similarly, they require a curtailing of inquiry. At some point, you have to stop investigating, or you go, well, that doesn't make sense. What is the nature of consciousness? How does consciousness emerge from biochemical processes?
Right.
Why has Newtonian physics fallen apart in the quantum realm? Everything that we understood to be real. Why is matter mostly space? And what I'm saying is that in the end, through brinkmanship, you find yourself at the point of miracle. And the reason that I embraced spirituality is because it suggests a sense of ethics. Not that I know many great atheists, and both comics like Ricky Gervais and Brian Cox, and my country and stuff. And we mostly agree: be moral, love one another, be of service, all of those things. And so why focus on the points of distinction, really, when you agree on what appear to be the most fundamental aspects of it? But for me, the idea that what we are honouring is non-separateness, the glory of diversity and individuality, the sort of ever-expanding fractal nature of our reality, all of this wonder, all of this awe, and somehow is it relevant to the way we organise our systems of power or not? What are we going to do? Because once you extract the possibility of unity, once you extract the possibility that love has some value, some resonance, and then perhaps is perhaps in fact the felt experience of oneness. Are you pouring that about knowing what it is?
I want to get. No, it doesn't matter. Continue. I'm listening to what you're saying. I want to hear it.
Is that urine?
No. Tell me, finish this thought. It's just, yes, I forgot that this was the soda.
I suppose.
All right, then, as long as you stop, I'd like to make this point about, I feel like when religion is ethical, it's coincidental. I'm not saying it's not, religion can't be, but it stumbles upon it like almost haphazardly. The Bible, the Ten Commandments, most of them have nothing to do with what we would call ethics or morality. The top 4 are just about God being jealous.
Actually, here I would differ.
Really?
I've got an interesting perspective once on the Ten Commandments. If you consider them instead of edicts, and I know that the name commandment suggests that it's I've just commanded that you do that. But if you ignore that, and how I like to look at it is, if you consider when you are enlightened, you will not steal, you will not kill. And as for the point of worship no other gods than me, all of us engage in idolatry. What I believe the point that is being made is, if you do not find God, if you do not find your own God, which could be love, which could be America, which could be nature, which could be abundant and limitless things, if you do not find that, then everything is potentially God. Your lust suddenly is God. Your desire for entertainment is your God. Greed is your God. You shall worship no other gods than me. And this God is submission for me, Bill, is not just about supplication so that you can be organised into a lovely little flock. It's about, it's the first system that you need to conquer is the self. The self. If I can't overcome my ego, then I will live. That is my God. That's how I take it.
I get that. You're right.
Do you? This is quite complicated.
What's that? Your new American character?
No, this is my new American character.
But you're being very charitable to the author of the Ten Commandments, who lived in the Bronze Age and did not have your flowery interpretation. It's nice that you can put that on it. Yes, that's a lovely way to interpret it. It's not what he meant. What he meant is there's a man in the sky.
It's difficult, isn't it, for us to discern what, as it went through Aramaic to Greek to King James
version. They just
version.
didn't think like that back then. They didn't know what germs or atoms were. They were scared. They believed in gods in a very real way. I've studied the Bible. I took a course on it at Cornell. The Bible, they definitely were not making them. This was not metaphorical. It was not.
I think that if you look at that book as literal, then I feel that its value is limited. And I think most articles of faith bear the inflection of the culture that they were produced by, necessarily and understandably. But what I would say about my obviously limited understanding of hermeneutics is that people appear in the desert faiths to be aspiring to some kind of unity. Now I know there's stuff in there that's that's somewhat at odds with our modern take on reality, but I also would pull you up on, this is only a couple of thousand years ago. 10,000 years ago, we were basically the same pre-agriculturally. For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived in little tribal societies, organized around manageable relationships. Our nearest ancestors, the primates, when they hit communities of 70, 80, they split. And I feel there's so much to be learned from the values that preceded civilization as we understood it, particularly in a time like this of fracture and nihilism. So I'm not dismissive of any of that documentation, not least because how do these myths survive? Who do they serve? Now, you can make somewhat cynical arguments about like Protestantism succeeded in Northern Europe because it deified the work ethic, so it was like a good way of getting people into the grind, useful for agriculture, useful even when the Industrial Revolution took place. But just because of utility, I don't feel that we can be dismissive of it. And also, Bill, the challenge that's left for me is once we exclude the spiritual path, we are left with post-Enlightenment rationalism. And what that seems to lead to is the reverence for the individual. Celebration only of the primal urges and the primal desires, and that which can be measured.
And believing excessively in spirituality and things of a beyond the realm of earth mode leads to flying planes into buildings and lots of other horrible things. But
don't you think there's a counter argument to all of that? That really those things are about dominion and territory, and they're not.
Once you let the balloon off the ground, once you take off those blocks and let your mind just go completely free up in the air with nothing to tether it, then it's very easy to go from I love my God to, you have a different God, I really should kill you.
But is this not true in the post-Westphalian Treaty age of nation? I love my nation, so therefore I don't like your nation. I mean, what is the distinction between religious ideology and nationalistic ideology when it comes to the boots on the ground and the drones in the sky? We're killing you rationally at a distance. Sorry about that wedding we bombed. You are
going to bring in the Treaty of Westphalia.
The Treaty of Westphalia is on the table, Bill.
I believe it was 1648.
I believe it was that
and I believe
or 12 minutes before 5.
I believe it followed the defenestration of Prague, where they threw him out the window, where we get the word defenestration.
Well, out the window. Out you go.
And it's that word has now come back into vogue. Not just because Putin does it literally, but it's a word that people use when they're talking about someone being canceled. He was defenestrated, which is great because it's from French, the fenêtre, window. So to throw someone out of
bit language.
But I want to know, who is this guy hermeneutics?
Nice. That's old school, man.
But I don't know that word.
Hermeneutics means a literary set of books around a particular faith. The hermeneutics, the canon of a particular religious set of
ideals. Like the Quran plus
there's the Islamic hermeneutics, Christian hermeneutics, the set of documents that underwrite a particular faith.
Have you studied these like in their original? I mean, you seem so learned on this. You must read a lot.
Well, I try to read, but this is
well, that's what a third grader says. Of course you do. No, but
all of the squiggles.
Like how much do you say would you read a day? And do you read books, like actual books? Because that's gone out of style. But I'm going to stick up for books.
Yeah, I do. And I sort of have I suppose what I have, like most autodidacts, is a sort of shallow knowledge in a variety of areas. I've not been educated, so
cocktail party knowledge, would you say?
That's what I've got, except
that's what I feel like I have.
Except for when I've had to legitimize my solipsism. There I have studied. It's like when it comes to why am I like this? Why do I feel this way?
Right.
What have other people felt like?
Don't you think that politics is an extension usually just of a personality we're born with? I feel like you were arguing with John on the show, and it's so funny that people, they have a lot of trouble following your politics because it doesn't follow the neatly cleaved divisions that we're in.
Yeah.
Like you'll go after MSNBC, and it's not because you're a fan of Fox News. No. I mean, it's kind of like to the left of that. So, or it's not in anywhere that you could say, oh, that's left or right. It's just how you see it. I feel like I do this exact same thing, and people, they don't like it when someone doesn't have a team, or a lot of people don't. The people who do like it, they like us a lot. But a lot of people just can't get there because we don't have a team, and you can't predict what our take on something is going to be.
That's right.
And that is, you know, I know it sounds like we're clapping ourselves on the back, but I mean, it's also just true. That is so lacking.
I think it's been great what you've done, having the chats with the people on the conventional right. If we're not going to have these conversations, what the hell's going to happen?
These people are not self-supporting.
What?
It's half the country. You have to talk, you know what I mean? When you look at the internet and all that kind of shit, it's always this, we own them, or we're going to own them, or like somebody did something that they don't, is stupid or not up to par. Oh, they got owned, they got destroyed. It's like all this language that keys people up to think that they can, that the answer to the thing when you don't agree with somebody, and there's all these people I don't agree with, of course, is to destroy them.
Yes.
Especially when I'm 67 years old, like their big thing is if they don't like something I say, it's just, they don't attack the argument itself. It's just, you're old. As if that's an argument. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's why I know some shit and you're making a dumb argument or not even finding an argument.
I will say, even on this point, that when we're talking about anthropology and how societies might organize, how families and tribes might organize, the annihilation of the category of the elder is in error. When you're chatting to Bernie Sanders on the show, I'm thinking, these guys, they've been around longer than me, they know stuff I don't know. I've asked an array of things, and now maybe I will learn something if I shut up for a minute. Perhaps you noticed I talked a little less in that moment. And I have regard and reverence for that, and both as part of because of my personal practice of how I might learn more and how I ought treat people, but also because in other areas where it might be easier to enter into conflagration and conflict, I feel that it's vital. Like I saw the other day, after the release of the Capitol Hill Jan 6 stuff to Fox News and in particular Tucker Carlson, in a British newspaper, The Guardian, like it said, like I'm just reading it, I can't imagine what led me to do it, and I regret that I did. And it sort of said like, they released documents, Kevin McCarthy, to the far right TV presenter, far right. I mean, it used to be like even in your country, like that. You'd have people in your family that are Republican and Libertarian, and people that are lefties and whatever, and we'd all just crack on and chat at Thanksgiving. Not like far right. I think if far right, that means that's a haircut, that's boots.
Right.
You can't just be far right because you're a traditional conservative person.
I don't know if you saw this, but when the Italian Prime Minister Meloni was elected, okay. So we never really got to it on our show. I wanted to. I guess we ran out of time. But like the papers were like, they were apoplectic. Fascism has come back to and they could not stand this. And like my position was, I don't follow Italian politics that much. I've read some of her statements. It doesn't sound like fascism to me. It sounds like things that we've heard people in this country on the right. It's a lot about we need to not forget our roots and traditional stuff like family. And, I understand why there's a backlash to some of the shit that's going on. It wasn't particularly, it was like, I'm a mother and I'm proud to be a mother. Okay, it's not fighting words. So, and also I wanted to make the point because they kept saying, well, her party has fascist roots. So did the Democrats. They were the party of slavery, okay, and Jim Crow. The Democrat, and they outgrew it. So to put that on her, that the roots. Yes, all our parties have roots. We all grow from corrupt places. And now I see she's invited to the White House. And again, I don't know who this broad is. I'm not defending her. I'm just saying the immediate hair trigger. Oh my God, the world has ended. Italy has elected a fascist. It's just the kind of thing that makes me go, I don't trust you in the media. I just don't trust you. There's some truth in that, but it's your narrative. I think they call it something like, I don't know, some kind of journalism now where it's like advocacy journalism, where it's like, we're not even trying, we're not even proposing that we're neutral on this and just going to tell you what happened and give you the facts. We're going to inject our advocacy into the front page where we used to reserve it for the opinion page.
Bill, I feel that the terrifying truth might be that the liberal establishment has been co-opted by the very interest that in the Bush-Cheney era we understood to be Republican. It's been co-opted by military-industrial complex interests. It's been co-opted by pharmaceutical interests. It's been co-opted by financial interests. And they are simply unable to have the conversation about why there is not a political party that represents the interests of ordinary Americans. That when Bernie Sanders was saying on your show that it's like who is the affiliate party of ordinary working Americans now, like more people say the Republicans, a comparable thing has happened in our country. It seems that there's been a sort of a professionalization, if I dare offer such a term, of both the media class and punditry and politics more generally, and there's a kind of distaste for working people. I was trying to get out with the Brexit argument. They don't like ordinary people, and the only way to mask that is, I think, by rightly honouring important issues around identity and excluded cultural groups. Those are conversations that need to be had, and I think they know that those conversations need to be had, but I think they're only willing to have those conversations because they recognise that you cannot bring to the table anymore an agenda that will affect the interests of the powerful. Like he said, like Bernie said, they were bought out by the same financial interests that we'd conventionally associate with them. And we're seeing it in the advocacy for war, that you can't talk about peace, you can't talk about diplomacy, that you have to vilify and reduce every narrative. That Zelensky's a hero and Putin's a monster. He's like, that's not the world that I live in.
Well, wait a second. Zelensky is a hero and Putin is a monster.
Well, the Panama Papers suggested that Zelensky, like a lot of Ukrainian politicians, has some interesting business dealings.
Well,
and that he rejected the Minsk agreement. And there was a peace deal on the table, and the West lobbied Zelensky not to take that peace deal. So said the former Israeli Prime Minister.
Because his country got invaded illegally. I mean, you know, I can't, I don't know why you're...
Well, I would say, Bill, because of ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall, there's been encroachment on former Soviet territory, that there was a NATO-inspired coup in 2014, and that there are significant profits being made. It's the same in a sense. Look, I would offer this. I'd feel a lot more comfortable about...
Whose coup in 2014?
The 2014 coup in Ukraine that was backed by US interests.
Why would we back a coup that gave Crimea to Putin? They lost Crimea in 2014, Ukraine.
The ongoing, I think, Bill, to say that this is a humanitarian war that has, as an inadvertent side effect, created all this opportunity for profiting for the military-industrial complex is as naive as suggesting that the pharmaceutical industry would keep good on their pledge to not profit from the pandemic. I'm not entering into the territory, like geopolitics is bloody complicated. Putin is clearly a former KGB, hardcore dictator-style politics. But like, I think that when we extract the American unipolar agenda, the idea that there can be global hegemony, that America want to destabilize Russia. Like, I think if you don't include that in the conversation, that what you get is a limited conversation.
We don't want to destabilize Russia. We were hoping after the Berlin Wall fell, and then 2 years later, Russia, the Soviet Union fell. We were hoping Russia would become, you know, one of the nations of the world that joined the family of Western democracies. There was no reason why they couldn't have democracy. They sort of gave it a go, but it was, you know, obviously the past was so corrupted that the future was not going to be untainted either. And then we did make mistakes. I would agree with this, which you probably, I'm thinking in the direction you're going in. I don't think we should have kept rolling NATO. First of all, why NATO if there's no Soviet Union?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying we should have necessarily disbanded NATO, but instead of getting more, strong NATO, more countries, it should have been like, okay, we're saying that the Cold War is over. So why do we need an organization that's against you?
Yeah.
That was a terrible message to send,
Yeah.
and I think that set things off. It may have gone to shit anyway. I mean, Russia is a tough place, and the people, have been brutalized by communism, which is horrible for the soul, not to mention the pocketbook. But yeah, go ahead.
Bill, can I give you a bunch of facts? Because then you can riff on them, because I'd love to see your take on these facts that come from our content on our show. Like our research gleaned from some great journalists, and it's mostly, okay to say, this kind of meta-journalism.
Right.
We accumulate facts. We don't use anything that's not been endorsed in mainstream media. And let me hit you up with some of this stuff, and because I genuinely want to hear your take. But let me give you the whole thing as an overview, and then you can, as Bill Maher, because let's face it, no one else can do this.
Knock yourself out.
Okay, so former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett said recently a Russia-Ukraine peace deal was blocked by Western powers. We know that Boris Johnson visited Ukraine and counseled Zelensky against taking the peace deal that was on the table. That's just one thing. Let me hit you with all this stuff. Zelensky has vowed to retake Crimea, but Russia said that's the red line that will spark nuclear war. We know that, all right? Republican Senate leader Mitch McConnell said in December 2022, the most basic reasons for continuing to help Ukraine degrade and defeat the Russian invaders are cold, hard, practical American interests. And then I'll just widen this out a little. The Pentagon spent $14 trillion after 9/11. 55% of it went to for-profit defense contractors. The average American taxpayer contributed $2,000 to the military last year. More than 900 of that went to corporate military contractors. At least 15 politicians who shape US defense policy have investments in military contractors. Military contractors split their checks more or less evenly between Democrat and Republican candidates last year. And Biden appointed a former BlackRock MD to the cabinet, in particular to sort out the post-Ukrainian reconstruction.
Okay, stop.
These are good facts, Bill.
These are facts. Possibly. I don't have a fact checker here. I don't doubt any.
You're not going to need one.
Wait. But it's so far from the point. I feel like your antenna for conspiracy theories. I mean, you have a good antenna, and then sometimes it does not serve you well, because, even if all this stuff is true, it's just more complicated than that. Both things can be true. It can be something that is a worthy endeavor to stop Russia from invading another country, and it also could be the case, it is the case, of course. People in the defense industry are looking to keep having reasons to make weapons and so forth.
Yes.
There are people who absolutely have a vested interest in war. Those are what your facts are saying. It doesn't mean, even if all that is true, and I would agree, there are people who have a vested interest in war. That doesn't mean, logically, it doesn't mean that every war is because of that.
I would
Wars
offer
can
this.
also be for another reason, and then these people glom
Absolutely,
onto that.
but
That's called the shock doctrine. When you take advantage, of a crisis.
Yes.
It's going on, but it also could be the case that the war is a valiant endeavor. To a point.
I'm not excluding that.
Not till they bombed Ukraine to nothing. I mean, it's a very valid question now to ask.
What I'm saying is, do you think it's a coincidence that the mainstream media only reports on one aspect of this conflict, only gives you one narrative? I am obviously not in a, look at my glittery trousers, I'm not in an a position to offer a definitive opinion on this. But what I will say is that sometimes when you talk about my antenna, right, this is what I think is either this war in Ukraine is motivated by a genuine and legitimate need to rightly and correctly support Ukrainian people who are under attack and suffering because of a war. Because when I've been looking at life, I notice how often humanitarianism is the motivation of the military-industrial complex. So you're always like, who can we help now? Who can we help now? And wouldn't it be great if we had a system that's just to make sure that there is no other motivation, there can be no profit extracted from this conflict. That the aid offered will not end up in Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, BAE Systems. Wouldn't that be a beautiful system? So as long as that is one of the possible reasons, isn't it the most likely reason?
Now I feel
I'm not saying, I'm talking about complexity.
I feel like now we're just making, you've made your point and I've made mine, and now I feel like we're repeating ourselves. Because I'm just going to say again, and it sounds like you didn't hear me, both things can be true. It doesn't.
No, but you said earlier,
not everything
like,
has to
Putin
be
is a
either
monster
or.
and Zelensky is a hero. And I'm like, well, hang on, what about this shit? Because do you think, like, how long
your
do you
reason
think
for-
Zelensky's going to get support if his interests don't converge with the
to be
MI6?
throwing your hands together like, oh, on the one hand, yeah, Putin is a murderer who pushes people out of windows and starts wars and all these crimes against humanity, and this guy has some shady business dealings. He's Ukrainian. He was born with a shady business dealing. I mean, that's what the country was known for before this. But, okay, let's not...
We'll park it?
What?
We'll park that.
Park that.
it.
Yeah, we made
You're
our
actually
point.
going to do shots.
So,
Oh, man,
well,
how
no,
decadent
I'm
is this? What are you going to do
gonna
next?
pour
Heroin?
this. No, I just want to know, does that look like more than a shot?
I'd say that's a generous shot.
But it's a shot glass, so why are they...
Yeah, what else can it
are they
be?
trying to get me drunk? I'm just going to have a little... But I suddenly realized, I was trying to think, it was in my mind, what is his accent that it amuses me so much? Your accent is exactly the accent that Eric Idle uses in Monty Python when he's playing the dumb guy.
Oi! Which one?
Like Reg, you know.
Like in...
What did the Romans ever do?
Like, well, I mean, I love
You
you,
really-
even though there's an insult in that.
No,
What I'll say that it's more
No,
like...
it's a
is
compliment because it's
love
the
it.
contrast of how bright you are with that character who is not.
I know.
But you sound alike.
It's because I'm from Essex, which is the New Jersey of my country. This is the dirty
But
little
you know what I'm
secret
talking
I've
about?
trekked across the Atlantic
that
with.
voice that he does?
Yeah, of course I do. But what I would say I would offer you as a Monty Python aficionado and devotee
You must
is
be.
it's more like Holy Grail, where it's like, come and witness the oppression of the system with Michael Palin. Like, oh, look at how they're oppressing me. Who made you king? I didn't vote for you. We're an anarcho-syndicalist. That's
I
so
mean,
close to
that
it.
movie.
Yeah, the
I
Grail.
could watch it every year like The Wizard of Oz. It's just, first of all, it's so funny.
Yeah.
Like just funny.
Yeah.
And then the points they were making, they're so prescient. There's one where he wants to be a woman. I want to be known as Loretta, Reg.
What's the point in fighting for your right to have babies when he can't have babies? Where's the
Right.
fetus going to gestate? You're going to keep it in a box?
I mean, that's like something someone could have written for a sketch last year because of all that kind of stuff that's going on.
This is, I suppose, why my true ideology, my true religion is comedy, because the ability to continually refer to isn't this bloody ridiculous. None of us know anything. We're all putting on a show, for God's sake.
Exactly.
It's a mess. My life's a mess. I don't know how to cope with my own life. I don't know how you're going to solve the conflict in
Right.
Ukraine. I don't know what you're going to do about the
Right.
influence of corporations on American government. I don't know. The truth is, I don't know, and it's bloody ridiculous. And, you know, like having recourse to, and I think this is why we are seeing, do you agree, the emergence of comedic commentary in the political space. I suppose maybe it began with you, Jon Stewart, that kind of stuff, and maybe even before you, like
yes.
Carlin,
Well,
Kicks.
And what's different, yes, I mean, there was always some of that. What's different is that what I was doing when we started was something that they said could never work, which is having the host also render an opinion. The other guys, like Johnny Carson, never did that. It was like, no, you'll alienate half the audience. And my theory was, no, they can like you if they don't agree with you. In the 30 years since I started, that's almost completely switched.
Yeah.
Because now, to survive like in a late night American talk show, you have to just be preaching to that liberal audience, which is, you know, mostly what I would agree with too, but it's like, it's so indoctrinated. And it's so like, we all have agreed that this is the premise. Like Maloney's a fascist. That's a perfect example. We all read it in the New York Times, and now that's what or somebody read it for us, told us, and now the Italians are taken over by the fascists. And like, no attempt to like look under the surface or a differing point of view or so just stuff that will make people clap in the audience because this is what my team believes. This is, you know, ivermectin is horse medicine or whatever it is. You know, I think you brought that up today. And like, that was a really good example. I mean, they absolutely did like, it's ivermectin, it's a drug, it's not a politician. How you could like, the way they in this country like can just knee-jerkingly take a very obstinate side of an issue that says that, what are you talking about? Either it works or it doesn't. Doctors prescribe it to humans. Maybe it helps and maybe it doesn't. Maybe like some drugs, it helps some people and not others. That to me is the most insane thing, that this becomes like you are a witch because you believe in it, or you are, a genius. It's not that dramatic.
Book that I found most helpful on this subject was written by a former CIA analyst called Martin Gurry. He wrote a book called The Revolt of the Public. He had a apolitical role within the CIA. That's how he describes it, as a data analyst. He says that in 2001, this is presumably a fact, as much information was published that year as in all human history up to that point. And in 2002, because of the advent of the internet,
of course.
And then in 2002, the amount of information doubled again. And then every year since, the amount of information published has doubled. He said that when you looked at it on a graph, it looked like a tidal wave, and it had the kind of impact that a tidal wave will have. Information is being generated and created. You can't generate a central narrative and not have it challenged in the same way that you could 50 years ago. Now, a single journalist or individual with a phone can create content that can be seen by millions and millions of people. As soon as a narrative emerges, there's a counter-narrative, there's a counterpoint. Like our discussion there about Ukraine. Again, I'm not like, these are not nailed-on facts to me. These are discussion points that ought to be included in the mix when you're talking about something as potentially incendiary as nuclear Armageddon. You want to make sure that you've considered all of the facts, and that you have a media that isn't so beholden to centralized interests that it's not including all of the facts. He said, Martin Gurry, that what he says that he goes, I believe in liberal democracy. That's what I believe in. This guy is not a radical. But what he's saying is that we saw it first with Napster, then the Arab Spring, then the Occupy movement, that the potential for disruption became so sort of ravenous and potent that they had a choice to make. Either we're going to have to alter the way that power operates, we accept that there are numerous publics, numerous spheres, numerous perspectives that people hold very dearly, or we're going to have to double down on authoritarianism. How is it that the Democrat Party, the shrine of liberalism, social liberalism, open-mindedness, investigation, became the party of authoritarianism? The argument, of course, Bernie Sanders made all the economic arguments, but he says more broadly and beyond the distinctions between the two parties, is you now have to double down. And even taken in your late night talk show thing is like, that's over now. They've got their audience. The Republican right have got their audience. The Democrat left have got their audience. Play to your audience, count the money. The model's changed.
For proper perspective, I hope you would concede that the greatest threat that's come out of America as far as falling into authoritarianism came from Trump claiming that he did not lose an election, he plainly lost, and getting a giant chunk of his party to go along with that. That is the threat to authoritarianism. Other threats do exist, including some from the left. They are not nearly on that level.
I may say, don't you think it's a greater threat that whoever wins an election, the changes, as we discussed on your show, are not going to be significant enough for most people? But that's the real threat. The real threat is, the reason that most of the lobbying money is split 50-50 is because they're perfectly fine with either party getting in.
I've been hearing this for I don't know, since I was a teenager.
Right.
No, I haven't told you yet. I've been hearing, let me tell you first. Don't jump your cue. I've been hearing since I was a kid that, why don't people get in the streets? Things are so horrible. And it's like, I finally realized, because for probably a majority, but certainly a great preponderance of people in America, life just isn't this unremitting nightmare. And so, yes, as a liberal, do I believe for the people who life is a nightmare, we should constantly be working harder to make it so it's not for them? Yes, I do. Am I willing to give a big chunk of my money? And I do, to alleviate that misery, that we're all kind of in this together, and it's not cool if some people are really suffering. Yes, I do. But the reason why Bernies don't get elected and there isn't people in the streets all the time is because most people is like, on a very basic level, they get it that maybe maybe America is actually still better than most places we could be. And I'm not really doing that bad. No one's actually starving. We have lots of problems, and there are homeless on the streets and lots of shit. But, you know, I get up every day. I fucking do what I want. I have material goods. The toilets work. Yes, it's a mess in a lot of ways, but, you know, am I going in the streets? No. I've got a meeting tomorrow for something, for my business, because this is still a country where I can start a business and like I can reinvent myself. That's a lot of what people like about America. Is that face you're giving me because of the smoke, or because of what I'm saying? I guess it's what I'm saying.
It's because it's
such a bad face you have. It was like a I smell a fart face. It was just awful. And especially that I'm so right.
No, it's because, I think it's because of despondency and despair and a kind of
Yes.
castration of the spirit. That's what I think is that people, by and large, don't believe. And I think that the phenomenon of Trump could be regarded differently. I'm not talking about the sort of the contested elections, because my personal perspective is it doesn't actually matter who gets in for a significant number of people. And I'm sure you're right when you're talking about like the professional class or coastal folk or most people that enjoy the affluence that I've been afforded over my lucky little life. But I also believe that I read a good book by a man called Mark Fisher, God rest his soul, though he was an atheist and wouldn't thank me for saying that. He wrote a book called Capitalist Realism. He said that he believes that the great triumph of capitalism has been that we can no longer envisage a system beyond it. He said, famously, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. People aren't even willing to imagine that there's the possibility of divorcing corporate and state interests.
Because capitalism works.
I'm not talking
for
about
a great deal of people. That's why it's popular.
It's working less and less, though.
The same way, like, stereo became popular. Like, we could have stuck with mono, but we were like, you know what? This is actually better. It kind of works. Does it lose something? I guess that's why they keep putting albums back out in mono, and I'm like, I don't know, why don't you just put them back on 78s, for fuck's sake? Why are we going backwards? Or the kids, they like vinyl? Like, you know, I have my old vinyl. It's like, please, enjoy listening to shitty sounding records that are scratchy.
I would say, in a way, people are on the streets. People have been on the street, not in enormous numbers, protesting for an end to current conflicts. The Black Lives Matter protests, and obviously the movements around Donald Trump, and the movement around masks, and the trucker protests, and all of the agricultural protests in Germany and Sri Lanka and Holland, all around the world. People are protesting.
Do you know a lot of people who have been at protests or in the streets? Because I don't know anybody.
Well,
I mean, it's just like people were sympathetic. Maybe it's because I'm older and people my age don't go out and do anything, let alone go to the fucking street. I don't go to a restaurant.
Even that too much bother.
It's amazing how ageist this country is.
But what I mean to say is that there are significant protest movements, but I think what there is a clear lack of a real vision that probably since Clinton and Blair onwards, no one is suggesting anything other than the management of decline, kind of intimate bureaucracies where we biometrically measure and manage our own health. No one's saying we could do something fantastic with America. Rhetorically, of course, great claims are made by either side, but no one's suggesting that we could reorganize society. No one's anticipating what the AI revolution is about to behold, the loss of jobs, the despair, the despondency, and that is likely to engender. And we were sort of seeing a return to feudalism. Yeah, in that beautiful film, The House I Live In, the great writer of that show, The Wire, said, you know, when it comes to the opioid crisis and the addiction crisis in your country, he said, well, why don't we just admit that in a post-manufacturing America, we've got no need for 20% of the population. They're redundant now. They're defunct. We can lose them. And sometimes I think it comes down to simple demographics, that this nation can carry a good many deeply dissatisfied and unhappy people. And by God, it looks like it is. Because if this ain't nothing, all of this conflagration that's going on in this country, mostly it's seemingly housed around the culture war, where I think they're quite happy for people to quibble and quarrel visceral and raw, because ultimately that doesn't affect the interests of the kind of the elite establishment interests that I'm interested in addressing and that Bernie has tried to address. And I would offer you this, because it seems as during the conversations that I have had with some like former Democrat Party presidential candidates, that party almost consciously, deliberately and explicitly decided they would rather have Trump win than win themselves with Bernie. I'd like to put that to you, because that, for me, if that is true,
I will answer that, but I will answer it first in this way. Can I just take this conversation, same topic, but a little more toward the pedestrian diurnal? I mean, I know you intellectuals, you know...
What do you mean, you intellectuals? I just told you I'm from the New Jersey of England.
I know, but
I may be sipping kombucha.
You do think like an intellectual. I mean, it's because that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, let's go to daily life and see if daily life matches with your theory of life. Because, like, as you go through your day, now maybe I live in a charmed world.
Of course you do. Of course I do.
I don't think I live in such a charmed world where I go to an office, you know, I see people who work, they're not all like making giant salaries. One person at that show is, I'm not going to say who. But there's plenty, HBO is very generous. It's a good job, but it's just a job. We all do it. I'm the same as them. Like, oh, there are days like, oh God, I don't want to, I'm tired, but I got to keep working. And we all do our best. And I don't think they're unhappy. And then if I go out and get coffee somewhere and, you know, even a waiter or like even the guy who's like the valet guy, they don't seem miserable. Like, oh my God, I'm going to, they like, you know, they're living their life. Like when I was in my 20s, I was poor. I got it. Like, you know, I'm working my way up and there is opportunity and there's stumbles along the way and there's lots of problems and we should keep working on them. But it's like, I don't know if it's going to get better by being massively rewriting human nature, which is impossible, or the way the world is constructed. I think people are selfish. I think you have to always factor that in. Anytime you're developing any kind of economic system, people are selfish. And they will go toward what makes their life better. Hopefully not at the cost of somebody too much, but sometimes, you know.
You believe in enlightened self-interest, but also I don't figure you for a misanthrope. I don't feel that at the heart of your beliefs is people are bad, because at the core of my ideology is not even a begrudging, but an optimistic love of humanity. And my belief, Bill, is that if we enshrine, elevate, celebrate, and possibly even legislate the higher principles about nature, compassion, kindness, service, unity, a willingness to sacrifice. And this is where it does get personal, because I have to ask myself, what are you willing to give up, Russell Brand, in order to live in a fairer world? And I'm not just talking about taxation, because, by the way, affluent, like, sort of, you know, millionaire entertainers ain't the issue. We're talking about billionaire offshore corporations with unprecedented power that make the Carnegies and the Rockefellers look like sort of quaint little guys with Jackson dimes.
But I feel, my guess is that you live a very nice life, and my opinion of that is you should. You're talented, you work your way up, but you can't like enjoy it without having some, I think, inappropriate guilt, or like it shouldn't be this way. The world is only what it is. We're always trying to better it, but there's, you know, just enjoy. And no, you shouldn't trade places with someone who's like not doing well. We should lift that person up. That doesn't mean we have to like put ourselves down. Lift up the people who need lifting.
I agree with this entirely.
Oh, good.
I'm in absolute agreement with that. I prefer
even the part where you're making yourself crazy for no reason.
Maybe.
Really?
I'm open to that. I'm open to that. I'm open to the fact that something.
Well, can I absolve you of that?
Oh,
can I put,
God, please.
Please. There's no reason.
It's okay. Am I doing all right?
Absolutely. And your life hasn't been a picnic either. You've had some really trying times and all that addiction and, you know, bad press.
The addiction and the bad press wasn't easy.
I mean, just, you know, but, you know, how old are you now?
47.
47. You're like, right, you're perfectly where you should be. I mean, and by the way, there's nothing you couldn't do in show business. I don't know.
Oh God,
what you must just not want, you must not want to, but you like doing what you're doing. I mean, you're a crusader. You don't have time to like get in spandex and do but you would be such an awesome, you know, you're perfect for like the Marvel universe. I mean, you could be the villain, you could be the erudite man. You could be like something.
I have a calling, and I'm, like we discussed and joked about. Remember, it seems like an eternity ago when I was rifling through my rucksack in search of the mini moil that you mentioned that I am a seeker. And when you say something like we should lift people up, that I feel that there is no chance of that happening with the kind of entrenched systemic interests that we have now, because as they say in the circles I move in, it's not a bug, it's a feature. There is a requirement for endemic poverty. There is a requirement for an abandoned and suffering class of people. There is a requirement to distract us with conversations that, whilst important, will not alter the trajectory of ordinary people's lives. And do you know what?
I agree with all that.
I can't help it. I wish I could. I don't mean I can't help the situation. I'm sure I can make some small contribution. What I mean to say is that this appears to be the most organic expression of the drive that I've always felt. I mean, you became you're ultimately with two stand-up comedians that have had breaks in various ways. And for me, the stand-up comedy, it seemed like, oh my God, this is the purest form. I can just get up there and I can say whatever I want. And like you, I'm sure, I did it for nothing in clubs for a long, long time, open mic spots, unpaid gigs. I did it. I got bottled on stage. I got dragged off stages.
Me too.
I had tough times.
And I'm so glad.
Isn't it great that it's over?
At the time, it's so great. when people ask me, say, how do you do it stand-up? I always tell them, if you really want to know the truth, you have this idea. There's so much pain. Sad clowns. Where said there is a shitload of pain, but it's all like in the first few years. Then there's things that are not perfect, but it's that beginning where you're learning to be funny in front of people when you're not funny. I mean, you probably were a hit right away because you just have a gift of the gab. And I mean, the fact that you don't I would love to see you live, and you don't play in America, do you?
Yeah, I did a show. I do. I've not been here for a while, but I do live gigs. I'm not when I talk to Rogan, he says you should it's a duty to do the clubs and stuff. But Stanhope says, I worked hard to get that audience, and now I'm going to play to them. I'm going to play to the people that love me, that come to see me because they want to hear what I've got to say, rather than that agony of persuading these fuckers.
That's so funny. I mean, I have the highest regard for Joe Rogan. I really do. I wish I could do his show more. I did it last year.
Yeah, no, I watched.
But that is such a Joe Rogan thing to say about, he's that kind of comic. I've known that comic since I started. There's a kind of comic who's it's almost like we're in the army, the army of comics, and they're just very, they're just very, and I get it. I mean, I love comedy too. I just don't have that, you gotta, when I started, there was a lot of rules, you gotta have 6 clean Tonight Show shots before you move to California. We had this template.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, yes, you get clean. So that's 30 minutes of very clean material so you can do it on the Tonight Show. And then you'll get a sitcom. That was the thing. We all wanted to be in a sitcom.
Yeah, that was the pathway. That was the route for the elite achieving comic. I sometimes feel guilty again that I don't do that. I'm get out there and do them clubs, suffer a little bit, go out there and win them over, and make sure that your opening 5 is good and that it's dutiful. Because I love I feel like Bill Burr, he would play anywhere and he would make it work, and Louis would play anywhere, make it work. A Chappelle, I adore those contemporary American comics at the top, rock, all of them guys. I suppose for me, and I'd love to hear more about your contemporaries and how you came up and stuff. I feel for me, there's shamanism in stand-up comedy. There's a real ability to create beautiful feeling in that room, to explode stuff, to explore incredible ideas. And I sort of I've had the reason I did movies and all that stuff is because it's just hard not to. If people offer you those things, you feel like, oh my God, I've got to do it. But for me, it's a world away from what I actually want to do. You're very lucky to have, lucky and of course diligent and fastidious to have carved out for yourself this position where you can operate in what seems to me to be your perfect environment. That's amazing, and it doesn't happen for very many comics. And of course, there are reasons it's happened for you. I'm not lucky.
HBO has been a great place. I mean, we survived for a while on ABC for 6 years even, but HBO really gets me, and I do well for them. So it's like that rare marriage where, and they're genuinely nice people. They're like people you could deal with. They're not.
See.
Yeah, I mean, they caught it. They sort of, for a long time, had it to themselves, this mode of operation, which was to hire people to do shows and then completely leave them alone and be like, we trust you. Just do your thing, and we don't interfere a lot. And for a long time, they had that to themselves. Other networks were too stupid to do that. They wanted their network executives to always make notes and just too much meddling. And finally, the other ones got the hint that the real talent is always going to migrate to the place where they can be free. And HBO has had some bombs because they let somebody they trusted. We don't all hit 1,000, We don't all get it. And that's okay. That's what art is. Sometimes it's failing. And when it's failing, it's, thank God, only failing for 13 weeks.
Yeah, I had my shot at that. I did a show on FX where they gave me probably a little too much freedom, and I misused it and misspent it. Like a little too avant-garde.
But that's their loss, really.
And
you should be on American TV every night.
With the show I have now, I did this deal with Rumble.
Yeah,
I did 5 shows.
Exactly. It's
amazing.
TV's like kids don't even have TVs.
No,
it's an old medium.
Moving towards obsolescence, presumably, other than in some some manageable spaces, I would assume. And what I have now, doing a show 5 days a week, streaming live, uncensored, tackling the idea of appealing to an audience that I know are ultimately more open to sort of right-wing politics, but doing my best to convey ideas beyond that. That ultimately,
what is Rumble now? I'm so media stupid.
It's essentially a competitor to YouTube, which has made its raison d'etre non-censorship that has been taken up initially by a lot of like you'd have to say, right-wing voices, but doesn't have any skin in the game with regard to the kind of content that is put out, except for that you continue to own your content and you can say what you want, you can talk about what you want. And for me, freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom of speech to sort of condemn and criticize people. It means freedom of speech to attack establishment and look for ways to bring people together. I'm interested in, I suppose, a re-emergent populism, and I feel that this, like a left-wing populism as it was initially intended to be, it was assumed there will be an accompaniment to the trade union movement, a true populare, the empowerment of people, as much democracy as possible, as much control over community as possible, a real ability to confront establishment power and even state power. The two heads of the Hydra being an over-empowered state and an over-empowered corporate world. And now that we have those things essentially combined, this in absolute symbiosis, there is.
So is this Dave Rubin?
Dave Rubin's on there. Yeah, I know Dave's been on.
It's not his company, though, right? But
Dave owned, I believe, Locals, which is the sort of membership aspect of Rumble, which is essentially like YouTube.
He's been here. I love him.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And we don't agree politically.
No.
But we laugh about it. It's And here's the problem with where we are, media-wise, especially free speech. As comics, we adore free speech. It's my lifeblood. I couldn't be.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to the people who came before me who were martyrs for free speech in a way. I mean, Lenny Bruce had 9 trials, I think. Trials, actual trials.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, my trials. No, I mean, we're actually putting you on trial. Yeah. But so free speech, I mean, when I was younger, I mean, there was no doubt in my mind who the champions of free speech were and also the threat. And the threat was all on the right.
Yeah.
And the champions were all on the left. And that's not how I feel now. So when people say oh, why are you harder on the left? Well, that's one of the big reasons. Because I certainly appreciate the threat, free speech from the right. I mean, Trump said, if anyone took him seriously, like if he was a normal president where you didn't just hear something crazy again today and then write it off, people would have been very alarmed because he would say things like, the media is the enemy of the people. I mean, this is like Hitler talk, and maybe we should look into the New York Times or MSN. Maybe they should lose their life, just stuff that's really threatening. So I get it. There is threat on the right. But the left is much more in my face, much more constant, much more a daily problem. They just want to catch you and find people that go cancel. They're just a mean girl attitude to it, and it just squashes, it puts fear in people, so people don't speak their mind. When people are making cringy apologies, I always want to say, you know what, maybe the woke people should apologize to me and people like me for all the things they robbed us of never hearing. Jokes that were never told because someone was just too scared to say something, you know, letters, emails, things that were never written, thoughts that were never expressed, because it was just easier to go along. So when I hear about a free speech platform, unfortunately, now that to a lot of people, and including me, my antenna goes up like, is this actually a right-wing platform? Because the right, it's funny, because the right actually, I think, wants this kind of free speech. That's like I know a lot of doctors who were reasonable people who should have been heard on COVID.
Yeah.
But MSNBC wouldn't put them on. Oh, we should have brought that up today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was moving into, I was going to do.
So the only
I had
place they
list.
could go was Fox News. So then they get branded a conservative because they're on Fox News, and they're saying, I'm not. They're just the only ones who would put me on.
There were people that invented vaccines that were being called anti-vaxxers. The whole thing became hysterical.
But I mean, that's the problem with, so like when I hear about this I'm like, is it really a bunch of just right-wingers, or is it really free speech? So tell me.
Well, I believe that those categories are starting to...
Because you're certainly not just a right-winger.
No, I'm not. I mean, like, this is how I approach this. Like, people should be able to believe politically what they want to believe. It seems to me that if you're on the libertarian right, that you would believe in people's right for freedom of expression, right on what is currently regarded as the far left. Whether, you know, if you want to be left alone, you should be left alone to be who you want to be. And in fact, some kind of truce around traditionalism and progressivism seems to be a necessary one at this point. Look, you be as progressive as you want to be, you be as traditional as you want to be. Let's leave each other alone. We're going to kill each other over this stuff. We've got bigger fish to fry. And so the way that Rumble is regarded, and I spoke to Rogan about this, is, you know, it's being portrayed as a right-wing space. And there's no doubt that there have been right-wing contributors that have accelerated its ascent as a platform. But the reason I'm there, I've got no interest in condemning people or criticizing people because of their lifestyle choices, because of their culture. I do believe in freedom. But I feel that you cannot have that freedom without an open dialogue and an open discourse around all of these subjects, and the ability to make mistakes and the ability to be wrong and to resolve these issues collegiately and collectively in good faith, not be looking for ways to find easy sort of to tag it back to Trump or to tag it to this and to me, and there has to be some good faith arguments. Bill, I need a pee quite bad,
I know.
And I'm younger than you.
We have to wrap this up. I could talk to you all night.
Is this the wrap up shuffle there?
Yeah. But
Shall I shuffle forwards?
No. Wait, can I just?
Oh, you're shuffling forward to say something. Shuffle back.
I was going to. What were you just talking about?
Yeah, you were like quite high, because all I've smoked is a cigar. I'm completely in the same mood I was when I was on HBO.
What were you just saying?
I was saying that we've got bigger fish to fry, and we have to have a truce between traditionalism and progressivism. You get the idea. It's the same stuff I'm always saying.
Forget.
Are you going to let me do a pee? Because I'm actually in some distress. It doesn't take me long.
Right. No, let's just... This was like...
We're going to wrap it up on the pee.
I think so, because like I worked all day, you worked all day. I don't want to... I feel like I'm taking advantage of you. But, I know what I was going to say. You know, I admire you for so much because you're so passionate about these things. But because I just mentioned Lenny Bruce. So I'm going to say that that's a sign from the universe. And by the way, Dave Rubin's always trying to convince me about the universe, which I find amusing. But I'm going to pretend there's such a thing as the universe, who gives me messages, and say that Lenny Bruce, you know, he forgot to be an entertainer because he was so passionate.
Right.
I don't want that to happen to you. I don't think it will. It never has. You proved that, not just here, but on Real Time Today. It was just you know, you bring it, man. And just, that's, you know, I don't know why I'm anointing myself as the person to give you advice you probably don't need.
No, I want it.
Please, you're just such a great entertainer. Please don't, just, you know, I know the the world is falling apart, and it's certainly mostly your fault. But you know that old saying, don't pity the martyr, he likes his job.
Thank you.